Sally Irwin, welcome to the Feral Wisdom Podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you, and let's just get straight into it. So let's start with just a brief overview of who you are and what have you been up to?
Well, my name is Sally Irwin, as you've said, and I'm the founder of the Freedom Hub. The Freedom Hub's been in existence for about 10 years officially in Australia. I started that because I had experienced slavery overseas, and the Freedom Hub actually is set up to fight slavery in our country, because it does happen here, and also help rebuild the lives of people who have experienced it. So we have a survivor school to help them.
Yeah.
So I experienced it overseas, came back and thought, what can I do? Gave up my corporate career and went into this organisation with that goal, and then decided to use my business skills to...
So I think some people would be saying, what is slavery in Australia? I wouldn't have thought that, you know. I mean, I do know now, but I wouldn't have thought, like you think of some third world countries and people being exploited, but obviously it happens here as well.
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought. I was shocked, and having spent some time, 4 years actually, volunteering and helping the issue overseas, someone said to me when I came back to Australia, well, why don't you do something about it here? And I'm like, what do you mean do something about it here? You know, I'm a Sydney girl. I was completely naive. I had no idea at all. So I did spend a year really researching and trying to work out what's going on here. What does it look like? Is it like my experience overseas or not? Anyway, the latest figures are 41,000 people on any one day in Australia in slavery, and we know those figures are well underestimated because the Department of Criminology have found that only 1 in 5 come forward. So there's a lot of work to do, and I think, Australia's a good country. People have rights. So it's really become, that's what gets me out of bed in the morning is working out how can I actually help people understand this and do something about it.
Yeah, and you've got a really long history in this as well. Quite a few years, no?
Yeah. So I had 4 years in Europe in the anti-slavery space. Never dreamt I'd be leading something like over in Australia. And then it's been about 14 years, but it took me a number of years to really register as a charity and then set up a business to fund it, which we're one of the early entrepreneurs in Australia because of my business background. So I officially, it's 10 years old this year. But it took me a few years to get the courage up to do it.
Yeah, most of my audience entrepreneurs without a business background like me, and they really struggle in different areas.
Yeah.
So I think it is a big advantage to have a business background. It still doesn't make it any easier. It's a really hard journey, as
it really is. Yeah, startups and small business are hard, and I'd come out of corporate world, so I learned, it's hard. It's very hard.
Yeah, there's quite a few people that come out of the corporate as well, and they all say the same thing. So first question, failure story of the week, because this is the Feral Wisdom podcast. Across your entrepreneurial journey, what was the most significant failure you encountered, and what key lesson did you take from that experience that shaped your future decisions?
It's such a great question, particularly coming out of corporate world. I could pick a million things because if you're not failing, you're not growing, right?
Exactly.
So, and an entrepreneur will fail every week.
Every day.
If you're not, every day. You can be, in the morning it's on a high, in the afternoon it's a fail, and then we're back again the next day. But really early on, I would say my biggest lesson coming out of corporate world and into starting my own business is that I was employing people too fast. And what I mean by that is that people get very passionate about the cause, and if you're doing a startup, you're passionate as well. Yeah. So if people start humming your tune with the excitement of the new shiny thing, you think, oh yeah, and you employ them, and then they've actually not got the skills, or they're actually all talk and no action.
Oops.
Yes, and coming out of corporate world where there's a whole HR department that manage and weed out those people, you sort of don't realise. But in addition to just getting back to that corporate thing, you also don't realise at the beginning that the IT department handles computer problems, the cleaners come and clean at night, all the things that are taken care of, and you've got a business idea. Suddenly that business idea is just part of all the things that you've got to do because there's no one else doing it. So I would say I really floundered in the employing people because I was grabbing anyone that was passionate about ending slavery, anybody that was sort of, saying all the right words around my passion and what I was excited to do. So what shaped my future decisions around that was actually taking the time to learn to interview properly, do behavioural interviewing, and really see what action they've been taking in their own lives to adjust or change to be aligned.
But talk about, so you've brought all these people on and some of them weren't really qualified as you thought and they're enthusiastic but maybe not as skilled. And then, so did it happen like over time? Did you start, so what was like chaos started happening or what was actually happening in the business? What actually happened and what did you feel in that situation?
Well, I had a lot of volunteers. So leading volunteers is also a big challenge. So they were really running a lot of stuff. But this is even before I actually started the business side. This is just the first 6 months. I hired a survivor school manager and she was just as passionate and running everywhere. But we didn't have, we just, as you grow and you start to take on more, you don't necessarily, the people that start with you with all the passion don't have the skills to take it to the next level. Yeah. And then I decided, I realised I just didn't want to do fundraising and be a charity person. So even though we're a registered charity, I started to then look at, as entrepreneurs do, we study what everyone else is doing. And I think Thank You Water was just taking off, and the toilet paper, Who Gives a Crap, and people like that was starting to do social enterprise in Australia in the way that they were running a for-profit business and giving a percentage to their cause. Yeah. So I thought, well, gosh, I wonder if it's legal to have a business that's not a business, it's not for profit, it's for the charity within. So back in those days, there was no one doing that. So I had to pay a lot of money to a legal law firm to find a precedent that a charity could run its own business and keep all the profits to run its charity.
Which is more common now.
Very exactly. Common. It's very exciting to see, actually. Yeah. But I do believe we were one of the first in Australia. I don't know of anyone else, but they only found one precedent.
You were a trailblazer.
Yeah. They only found the one incident, which was the water something. I've got it written down somewhere. Yeah. I can't even remember it now. Okay. But it cost us a lot of money to get that. So that was the all-go. And then I stupidly thought, it must be easy to run coffee shops because they're everywhere. I'll set up a cafe.
So easy.
Oh, so easy. And it's still my biggest problem. But I can't let it go. 10 years of, and I set up one in Queensland. We have one in Ultimo, but over COVID I had to let them go. And hospitality is really, really struggling in the event space. So I've now actually got 5 businesses that all actually fund and help the survivor school. So I've got, and I think that's why we survived COVID, because I had the alternative revenues. The more revenues you can have in a startup, I think the better. As far as if you're funding something like I am,
absolutely.
If one goes down, you've got others to lean on and pivot quickly. So it was a big challenge. So then I had all this hospitality staff that were coming in with the whole Hell's Kitchen type language and attitude, and we're a human rights organisation.
Oh, no.
So that was my next major learning, trying to employ hospitality people and say, no, we don't swear and we don't yell at each other and we don't call people in the kitchen dish pigs. We are a human rights organisation, and if we can't love each other and be kind to each other behind the scenes, how's that going to rub off on the customers that come in? Yeah. We've got to be different to everybody else because we want people to come here and go, these people care about me and my name and my day, and this is going to be a reflection.
And it's a good thing to do. It's the way it should be.
Yeah. Yeah, I do think the world's got a lot better than it was 12 years ago in that space. Thanks to COVID, I think everyone's a lot more empathetic about everything, and Gen Zs are growing up that way. Yeah. So the needle is changing, but you're watching it on TV. You're seeing it, Hell's Kitchen and stuff, and the trainees and what they go through, and it was a very harsh environment. So I had a major learning curve in employing the right hearts in the cafe, and with that, the skills don't necessarily come, and that's probably still a very fine line that I walk. But in the other businesses, it's much easier. I'm definitely paying skills and people that have definitely demonstrated that they're capable. Yeah. I think as a startup, you've got your ideas, you've got all the lessons of life, and so you really want to explore them because you believe in what you believe in.
Yep.
And it's very easy to sort of try and gather people with that same belief, but you forget the need to have skills pull it off.
Yeah.
you don't have the time like the corporates to train somebody for a year or two till they start to fly. Yeah. You've really got to have them hit the road and be independent of you and be running their bit.
Even as a founder, like I didn't have a sales or marketing background, either did my co-founder, and that was a problem. That was problematic. You know? If we had those skills, I think things would have gone a lot better. Yeah. Or you get the right people. Like we had a salesperson pre-COVID that was just go out and face-to-face with people, and he was quite good, right? He had some things lined up, and then COVID hit, and he was terrible online. And then we did the same mistake as you. We just kept him because he was a nice guy and had same values, and you actually got to be a bit hard because not in a nice way, but, if it's not working,
that's right. You do, in the end, have to put the business ahead and for me...
Otherwise, it's not there anymore, like mine.
Yeah, that's exactly. And for me, I've got all these survivors of slavery depending on us keep helping them. Yeah. So, and that was a big thing with COVID for me. I just sat there going, okay, my biggest priority was what am I going to do with all these survivors? Like if we're in business next week, it's a miracle. Yeah. But who am I going to send, where am I going to send them? Is there shelters? Is there, it was a whole new mindset. So it was great to have survived it now and realise that we're invincible.
And so what were the things that made it invincible, and what were the changes that you implemented?
Well, I do think the ability to have a number of revenues. So yes, I had the cafe. Out of that, people started coming and going, well, wow, this place is beautiful. Will you hire it out? It's big. So we had weddings and events. So pre-COVID, we had the cafe, and we had Cafe Queensland. We had the wedding and events venue. So we had all that going on. But during COVID, what I did was add on, basically, the corporate offering of helping corporates understand how they can have an impact on slavery. So the Modern Slavery Act came out in Australia in 2018. Yeah. Every business over $100 million must comply by searching their business practices, their ethics and their supply chains for no slavery. Yeah. Because nearly 70% of the world's slavery of 50 million people is in Asia Pacific, which is our shopping ground, the shopping ground for consumers, for private enterprise and governments, right? Yeah. So I think our government's attitude was if we can move the needle on the big spend in our country, the government and the big corporates, it'll help reduce slavery. So that first year, even though I was sort of 2019, I was trying to tell people that we can help them with this, we can help them with this. I've been in the anti-slavery movement and we understand how it works. I was part of lobbying for the Modern Slavery Act. I've been running ethical business and my corporate experience was procurement, so I know supply chains, I know suppliers. But quite rightly, I guess, looking back, they went with their lawyers and the big consulting companies because they have, it's a whole new law. It's hard to compete,
isn't it? As a little person just starting, so to speak, little company or startup. Yeah, that's a real issue as well. Yeah. So how'd you get around that?
So what happened? Well, this is the thing. I think it's naturally happened because after they've been with their consultants and they've got all their policies in place, they've gone, now we've got to do something. We've actually got procedures have to happen. Yeah. So really, by 2020, the phone started ringing. Okay. And now we are flat out. We've set up a whole team. We do nothing but consult. Yep. And we go in and we help them. So we call it survivor-informed guidance. So we will go in and, yes, this policy is great, but from a survivor's perspective, on the ground, this isn't going to work and this isn't going to work, or you need to fix this up, or you need to get into more detail here. Okay. So we can give them really on the ground survivor experience on how to really implement the last few years of policy.
So you really pivoted.
Big pivot. Yeah, and it's also the future for us. We're planning, rather than setting up cafes in every state as we grow now, we'd rather have businesses partnering with us so we can help them with their response to slavery. They can help us with pro bono skills to help survivors. They can employ survivors. They can fund survivors through some of the training. Yep. So it becomes a relationship. So that's why I call it advisory as opposed to consulting, because consultants will go in, tell you what to do, and you're on your own. Whereas we stay, we need this partnership as much as they do. Okay. So we're with them for years. Oh, right. And that's been working really well. Two of the big four banks, we've been with them for over a year and we've got more business coming up next year. And
that's wonderful.
Yeah, it's great.
Just getting back to the failure story that you had about bringing on, probably the wrong people or keeping the people too long that didn't have the right skills at that stage, as the business grew. You said that you got through that by bringing better people, or so? Yeah, how did you recover from that, and what strategy did you change going forward?
I've been fortunate in the way that I've only actually had to probably move 2 people on in my time in the last 10 years. Most people have self-disqualified because they've realised that we've got too far, too fast. If I was back in the corporate world, I probably would have gone, you're not making targets, you're out. And one of the reasons I do business for good is because in my corporate time, I hated that. Profit ahead of people. So I have left people stay on too long, and it has cost us at times in business. But I've got to put people first. As a human rights organisation, it's also my heart too. So I soon find that they start to disqualify, and I'll start talking to them about we need more in this area. We need to start bringing people in that area, and they'll start to go, well, there's no way I can do it, and they start to see the path. So in that regard, it's been quite it's a soft touch.
Right, okay. And as a startup founder, I used to get lots of advice from people, and
everyone's an expert.
and lots of mentors, and there's a thing called mentor whiplash where you can get too much, and two differing advices, and in the end you're just like, oh, what do I do? So what's one piece of advice you followed early on that didn't work out, and what would you advise founders to be cautious of?
It's interesting because it's sort of back around the same topic of making sure that we go for values and develop the culture, and I believe we need to do that, because that's certainly, I guess with the advice side of things, just let me comment on that. You get to a point where you realise, I don't need any more experts. I need action. I need people to do this, right? Really hands-on. So I was training and I found myself every week having to prepare an amazing motivational almost speech for the team to get the values in and get the culture in. So if I had my time again, I think I would have had less people with more skill. I would have put as much money as I could into 1 or 2 really highly paid people that knew what they were doing, because it would have released me to then perhaps develop more of the volunteers, develop the people. But because I had managers that didn't quite have those skills, I spent all my time training them, and then I wasn't out there, doing what a founder does, which is sell the heart behind what you're doing. So, I think you got to be very careful of that. And then this is probably not necessarily the same for your audience, but if there's anyone listening that is involved in charity/social enterprise, we can easily fall into the trap of being all about the mission and not realising that the people that work with us have to have some business skills.
That's what this podcast is all about.
So I have often made the mistake of employing people that are just so involved, or have got so much experience in modern slavery, or they've got masses of experience in growing a charity around the world, or they've, and then you realise they don't even think about next week's sales. They haven't even looked at last week's sales. Like there's no hustle in them at all. So it's finding that balance, and even on the board. I have found that's an interesting area, because you can get a lot of corporates that have got all this business experience and they've never done on the ground stuff. So you've really got to think about that as well. They would be my biggest mistakes that I've made, is really idolising people's skills that are not the skills that I need.
Really targeting the skills that you need, and at the end of the day, startup, no matter what area it's in, it's a business. And you need those business skills.
Exactly. Exactly. And you don't just go, oh, well, it's been a bad week. You actually go, well, how am I going to make that money up for next week? And for me, with definite numbers that I have to hit to keep survivors engaged and getting them employed and getting them through what they're doing, it's not like I can just go, well, it's been a bad month, because that's going to cost a life, or I can't take on. We've got waiting lists in Queensland because I can't take people on because they're not raising the money up there. So it's actually trying to get the hustle in people, the sort of I find it so frustrating on your Monday meetings and they'll go, oh, it wasn't a good day, or it's not very busy, or I'm just going, well, what are you doing about it? Where's your strategy? Come up with something, you know, let's get some fire, let's get some hustle going. So
you think it's good to put people on trial as well? Just see how they go as well.
Yeah, I have a 4-month probation that's grown from 2. And with management, I still don't think that's long enough.
Okay.
I really think it should be 6 months for management, because it really does take, at that level, when you've got whole teams under you, it can take 4 months just to work out what everybody's doing.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, the bigger you grow. Yeah. I mean, how many people would you have in your Freedom Hub?
Oh. So actually, I'm in the middle of writing a grant, so I actually did this math yesterday. I was quite surprised how low it is. It's about 5 paid staff, full-time, and 4 part-time and casual. So it's around 10 altogether with a mix, but and around 30 volunteers.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and I've got some really skilled volunteers. Some of them are actually, solid researchers in the field. So that's another sort of tip that I've learnt within, I don't know if this is applicable to normal business, it probably is, but for social enterprise anyway, bringing in people that are skilled in an area I might need, but I haven't got the money to pay. Partnering, I've got a whole theory around partnering with universities, but partnering with the university and taking in interns that are studying in that area is a win-win. I'm really against internships, because I'm anti-slavery, in regards to some law firms that bring them in and sweep floors and they work 60 hours a week and they're never paid and they're used, which is why I don't partner with people to be interns. I partner with the universities and we sit down and work out the projects that they need to work on. And so with Sydney University, I have an agreement. We have rolling researchers that just want to study and research human rights. So that helps us with current case studies, current trends, what's going on, keeps me engaged. I don't have to read the papers all weekend and read the news all weekend to work out what's going on in the area. They're constantly feeding me updates. So that's really helpful, and not having to pay someone to do that is gold. Yeah. It's needed. Well, it's not needed for the business, but it's needed for the area that we are working in. And so there's interns that can help with marketing. Right. UTS right now are doing a video for us to promote our cafe locally. So they're coming and looking at all the local shops and all the stuff like that. So that's a solid project for 6 students that are doing marketing at university. They want a project that's real life. And so the university's happy. The teachers are checking all the time. They're keeping them in line, not me.
As long as you give them the really good brief, exactly what you need, that's important.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I mean, we had interns as well, and sometimes I thought they were great, and sometimes they needed, a lot of handling and spent a lot of time. And in the end, I thought, it'd be better without particular ones. You know what I mean? So there's interns and there's interns.
Yeah, I've learned over the years how to get good ones, and I'd say one of the keys would be having all your induction and training already online. So you're not having to train. Secondly, as you said, making sure they've got really solid project that they're to work to, and a timeline and KPI target points. And in the interview, for me, there's 2 things. One is for businesses, this would be the only thing probably, is that they must be self-driven.
Yes, that's the key.
Yes. I'll say to them, maybe once a week you might get to talk to me, but I want to see, you can drop things into the shared box that we've got. We can Zoom and we can do all that stuff.
Yeah.
But
for a startup, it's key. They have to be self-directed, self-driven, and they're the same type of people that can do courses online. Because I used to work in a large training organisation. I was 10% completion rate or something. It was all online. Yeah. It was pre-COVID as well, but the only ones that really did well are self-directed. So the same with interns. That's what you want. They say, I've done this task. What do I do next? What do I do? And you spend the whole day just.
And if you look at their resume and see how much volunteering they've done while they've done uni, you go, wow, these people are go-getters, because to do that outside of uni so that's one of the tips for me is to look at their volunteering and where they've been doing stuff like that. The second area that for me, and if anyone's in social enterprise, they need to think about is your cause. And that is making sure they understand that the cause is the why, the business, not the profit. And for me, they've got to not come in with their own trauma needs. So if they've experienced any kind of child abuse or anything like that, they can actually trigger very easily working in our environment because they will hear things and see things. In fact, I've had I learnt that early days because I had an intern not make it through our induction online. Yeah. Just with the story, she'd break down.
Brought out the trauma.
Yeah, brought out the childhood trauma. Yeah. She had to fly straight back to America where she was from. Wow. So I realised, oh gosh, not everybody's desensitised to the issue like we are. So I always have to check that as well. So there's a few tips on interviewing and making sure they're right. But I've built such a good relationship with the people in the universities. They know this and they can now, 10 years in, they screen and they send me the people they think would be great for what we're doing.
Awesome. Mm. Well, I mean, I was working out of one university and we got interns from all different universities. And it's some of the best that we got were actually from like private universities, believe it or not.
Yeah.
So, interesting. All right, so so for founders who want to build businesses with a strong ethical foundation, what are some practical steps they can take to ensure their supply chains are free from exploitation?
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't think anyone can ensure 100%.
Yeah.
We're all linked to slavery in some way. It's quite staggering. Sad. Just the cotton and all the rest. And every single electrical phone, laptop, we've all got it. It's all there. My biggest recommendation when I walk in and help businesses, especially the smaller businesses that don't have to comply, right? So over 100 million, they've got all their compliance in place. When I'm working with them, it's all about heart and bringing it down into the culture and their employees. But smaller businesses that don't have to comply, think, I don't have to comply, it's not a legal requirement. But if they want to supply or work with any business that's over 100 million, if they actually want to sell to government even, or the local council, it's in their best interest and it's a whole new marketplace for them if they actually think about this and get their acts together themselves. So I always go in and say to them, you've really got to focus on progress rather than perfection. Mm-hmm. A lot of, and even working with CommBank and some of the bigger banks, they go, our suppliers they just don't want to be part of this. They're scared we're going to lose us as an account. Can you come in and train them? And they'll pay us to train their suppliers because we're trying to help the suppliers go, okay, this act and what we're trying to do is about people, right? So we're obviously sharing what's going on with real lives, as I've told you, with my survivors. And then what are some of the easy, low-hanging fruit for you? Let's just start with that. Yeah. And it may be just I would say the first thing to do is just get all your suppliers and the people you work with on board with the fact that you want to go on this journey.
Right.
They're not going to lose their contracts overnight because it's a journey for you and you don't want to lose your contracts. So and you don't want to lose your business. So it's not going to be an overnight bang. If you don't comply, you're out. But you need to start. And, so I always really try and help them work out where's the best place for them to start. Is it to train their staff? Is it to train their suppliers in just the cause of the issue? Yeah. Is it to actually get better, whistleblower policies or grievance mechanisms in place? Or is it better to actually look at products that you've got that you use that are high risk around the world, like coffee if you're a cafe, or tea. Yeah. Tea's 95% slavery. Right. So, maybe that's where you start. Let's just look at the stuff that's really obvious and easy and what time you've got and just chip away at it, even if you can get an intern or somebody. So the amount of hours that goes into being a B Corp is huge, right? So this is nothing compared to that. Right. It's just you can chip away at it. You can have someone an hour a week even just going, okay, I'm going to write to all the suppliers and ask them to fill out this questionnaire. Okay. Or, so there's lots that they should do. But a lot of them go, I can't do it because it's so much, because they think they've got to be perfect and have no slavery. So
and what if you're just starting off as a startup? I mean, should you be incorporating this?
Yeah, well, I did that. Right. I'm suddenly running a cafe and realising I'm rescuing people from slavery, and I thought, gosh, what's the chances of everything in my cafe having slavery in it?
So what did you do in the cafe?
So what I did was actually seek out my initial suppliers, saying we are a human rights organisation, this is the path we're going on. I never dreamt that we'd be teaching and training other businesses, but I just knew. So it was very, very, very hard 10 years ago. It is so much easier today. We've got apps, we've got suppliers that have already done their due diligence because they want to supply bigger. Okay. It got to a point, early days, when the Modern Slavery Act came out, that it was actually better to buy from Coles than some of our small suppliers, because Coles at least were doing their due diligence because they were legal, right? And I'm like, this is crazy. This is not how it's meant to work. But 10 years ago, it was very, very hard, and I had to find small little local organisations that were low risk. I even had one of my caterers for weddings and things. He even went out to his lettuce farm. He went out to his mushroom farm. He went out to all his suppliers to make sure so that he could be one of our suppliers for our weddings. So there are people with a heart. It was finding them 10 years ago was very hard. We had a very small menu because we couldn't supply, and that's why you couldn't get Coke in our and you still can't, to be honest. But there's certain you won't find in ours that you find in all the other cafes, and that's because we will not risk having child labour in our supply chains, particularly in organisations like Coke and Nestle and stuff that not only do we know, but they know it's in their statements now. Yeah. So we actually try and work. We tried then, and that's what, if you're starting out, start right. Only go with suppliers. The other thing that we do to help suppliers, because we want people on the journey, we don't cut them out. We want everybody, to actually be ending slavery. So what we do right now that we're bigger and we've got our own foundation right, if a new supplier comes to us and we want to branch out, instead of saying you must comply to this, to our supplier code of conduct, we will talk to them about our heart behind them coming on the journey. And if they're actually really keen, we've got like it's sort of like a transparency agreement, but it's an agreement that they will work with us for 12 months to buy. So they've got 12 months to actually work with us to write their own modern slavery voluntary statement. Okay. Which they can, every year you do that and you show your improvements. So it's not about having no slavery, it's about your risk and what risk of slavery you've got. Okay. And then every year you add in more controls to reduce that risk. Yeah. And that gives you a lower residual risk. So as long as every year you're getting less and less residual risk, you're actually on the right path and journey. Okay. And if everybody does that, we're going to have a massive change in the world.
Yeah, fantastic. And I love that mantra, progress is better than perfection. I used to do this business thing that I did for a year, and that was their mantra as well, because there's no such thing as perfection, actually. Yeah. And it's better to be doing stuff and moving forward than think, oh, no, it has to be perfect. Or people have spent a huge, like us, from my start, huge amount of money on not an MVP, like a massive development before you even really know, how well it's going to go. So, I like that mantra. Now, Sally, obviously working in a startup, or business is really tough and really hard. And also you're in a space where, there's a lot of emotions and so how do you maintain your mental health? What do you do?
Yeah, it's like every entrepreneur, it's ups and downs every day. At first I reacted badly. I found early days as a startup, I was always cranky, I was always tired, I was always, seeing the faults in people not doing stuff and things like that. I think COVID really helped me take a step back and go, okay, and being, and like I was saying to the team, if we're here next week, it's a miracle. So it's sort of, it also forced people to want to work harder themselves because they wanted to see us survive. So the team lifted as well. But now it's the financial pressures of the economy. I do find that if the bank account's really low and the cash flow's low, I'm a highly stressed person. Right.
And so how do you?
And you don't want to share that with everyone. Well, a couple of things. First of all, I write in my notes on my phone. I have a gratitude list.
Very good.
So even if at the end of the day it's just been absolutely shocking, I will find one thing.
There's always something.
There's always something. And in fact, when you actually do it, there's always more than one thing.
There's heaps.
It's unbelievable.
There's thousands of things.
It is. And it actually becomes highly motivational for the days that you're really down. You just pull it out and go, so far, it's only, it feels like the end of the world one day, and you look and you go, gosh, we're only, 16 days or 17 days, whatever the date is, into September, and look at all these fantastic opportunities and things that have come my way in 17 days. It just brings it into perspective, because the problem or the cash flow or the bank balance can become the biggest thing. And when it fades into insignificance, when you look at the 17 things that have happened this month, that I've written down every single day, So I find that really useful. But like every entrepreneur, I'm sure there's midnight, I can't breathe, I can't sleep, I can't think. I have found that it's better for me to get up rather than just lie there churning. Okay. So I mightn't get up, but I will actually dim the lights so my husband doesn't go mad and get out my gratitude list, but also read. I also like to then start reading other entrepreneurs, just different books or different leadership. I'm sure most entrepreneurs have leadership books next to their bed. Or listen to the
Wisdom podcast, obviously.
Or listen to exactly. And I will then find I can go back to sleep, be it, if I'm awake at 2 till 4 and I've done that, I can go back to sleep at 4 and still wake up energized.
Okay, very good.
At 7.
Yeah.
Whereas if I've churned in my head over and over the problems for 4 hours, I'm drained, I'm exhausted, I don't go to work well. So that's been a really big learning thing for me. So stop fighting and trying to get to sleep, just wake up and get over it. So
we were talking about advice before. So Sally, you recommend people wake up at 2 a.m., listen to podcasts, write lists,
yes,
and read books.
Absolutely. If you can't sleep because you're worrying.
See why don't I give advice on this podcast?
Yes. So, it's so true though.
No, but in your situation, that works for you. Like
it really
whatever
works
for everyone.
Yeah. And then the other one, I sound like a sport brat, but we bought a boat.
Oh no!
They were
got to clean it. You got to put petrol.
My husband calls it boat. Bail out another 1,000.
No, I've heard bring out another 1,000. Okay. BOAT. Yeah, but same thing. Yeah.
So honestly, if I literally have to schedule because I've got grandchildren, I've got children and stuff, so I make sure there's at least one weekend that we will stay overnight. We'll do a Friday and a Saturday, and just the minute I step on board and we drop the anchor, I can just feel stress pouring off. I didn't even know I had. It's just because you're sitting out, you're looking at the ocean, you're looking around. It's you're being in nature. I mean, for some people it might be walking through on the beach or walking through a forest or whatever. For me, because I grew up with a father who sailed, so I think it's. Right. Yeah. I don't know. There's a lot in it.
Nostalgia and being out on the ocean, all those negative ions, as they say. Yep. But being in nature just helps you so much.
I just love it. And while at first I thought, I'm working, my husband said, no, it's your hobby. I actually find the creative side of my work everything seems so clear. So I will, at the end of the day sailing, I'll just madly, it's incredible. In what might take me hours to write a blog or something, I can do it in minutes. It's very clear, any problems I've got, solutions just come.
Because you're not working in your business and you're not thinking about it. Yeah. And then things it's like when a lot of people, ideas come after they sleep. They've got all these problems and they wake up in the morning, I can do this.
Yeah, in the shower.
Or I go riding on my bike and I'm enjoying the nature and everything. And like, I could do that, like this idea I wouldn't have had if I'm just there working away.
Yeah, trying to work on the problem when you get away from the problem.
Exactly.
Come back to it. And then the other, I guess, tip someone gave me, I can't remember who it was, but I've applied it in the last 2 years and it's really worked. Instead of just having a to-do list, having a to-decide list. Mm-hmm. I really loved it and it's worked for me.
You never get through all the to-do list, do you?
You never get through all the to-do list, but there's a lot of things on your to-do list that actually decisions that can be made later. So it saves two things, procrastination on decisions that have to be made, but also delaying decisions that are in the to-do list that you're worrying about. So if you put them aside and once a week look at your to-decide list, it clears your inbox. It helps you isolate it as a separate thing, and subconsciously you're thinking about it. And it's just easier to decide. So I like having both lists. Yeah,
because when I have like a list of things to do, or I know I have to do these things, I get almost anxious until I've finished them. I've got to finish them. You know? And one thing I think is Stephen J. Covey book, and he talks about you should do sort of a diagram with 4 quadrants. What's really important, what is really urgent, what is not urgent, what is least important, and that top quadrant, really urgent, really important, or not. No, the quadrant where it's really important and it's going to be a foundation for everything. You just work on that mainly, and then everything else will fall into place instead of putting out fires all the time.
Yeah. I've certainly followed that. I thought it was called the Eisenhower theory, but anyway, I've followed that for years.
Yeah.
And I guess subconsciously I'm not doing it anymore, but subconsciously I'm doing it in different ways. So I use coloured stars in Gmail, like literally that top quadrant you're talking about, get red stars. Yeah. Yellow are the ones that I can come back to a bit later.
Can you put coloured stars?
Mm.
Oh, there you go. Because I use Gmail like a bit like that too.
Go into your settings, go in the back, and you've got more than coloured stars. You've got all the different coloured stars, but you've also got exclamation marks and green ticks and all kinds of things. Oh. So I use the green tick as things that I want to, they're emails that I want to keep, but not, and may refer to one day, don't necessarily, I just don't want to delete them and I don't have time to file. It's time to file. So, and you can then go in and look at only your starred. So I'll jump and then I hit all the red stars first and then I start moving into the yellow. So I do that through emails and then, so that's how I prioritise emails, and then my to-do list is a bit similar. Okay. I've got the now, urgent. Yeah. And I use Asana as a project planner. I mean, this is when you start getting really practical, isn't it? But with Asana, you can actually set dates and times and assign tasks, and it gives you reminders. It's great. Yeah. So
it's good. I used to use Trello before I changed over, but anyway, they're both pretty good, I think. Yeah. There's free versions. All right. So what's next for Sally?
Well, we really, really need to expand interstate. We've been in Queensland for 5 years, but we had to shut our income down there with our cafes. So my big goal for next year is to get the team that's already there doing the charity work, we're funding them out of Sydney and it's draining Sydney. So we need to get corporates and businesses and people engaged in supporting the Freedom Hub Survivor School in Queensland. And also the 15... I think we've got about 20 survivors there and we've got a waiting list of another 9 at the moment. They're meeting in cafes and parks. So we've got to get a space, a room where they can study and meet, and it's a safe space away from refuges and stuff like that. Yeah. So I was really hoping by now I'd be exiting. And I keep saying to everybody, the gin and tonic and the yacht is really calling me. But I think this growth plan has inspired me as it does. Seeing the corporates really... I can see the needle. Like, I just love seeing. I think we're at a time in history where we can really impact global slavery, and I just don't want to bail now. Yeah. It's just whether we continue with the hospitality. That's the big thing. Yeah. For me, it's now trying to get the income, because they go together so holistically. This relationship idea, because they have to, the whole ESG thing, So that's really, for me, it's really planning. So we've got a 5-year goal to have a school, a physical school in Brisbane, Melbourne and Perth and Sydney. So we've got the main cities to start with, because then people can be brought in from the regional areas if need be. So that's the 5-year goal. Okay. And we've got noise happening in Melbourne, and we've got some survivors in Melbourne, but they're in jail. So when they come out, we're going to have to do something. Okay. And Perth, there's teams of people talking. Brisbane's we've got the team, we just need the space. So I think I'll be around for a little bit longer, but my goal would be to try and get it down to 3 to 4 days a week. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. I mean, there is research that working 4 days a week is actually in companies more productive than 5 days. Yeah. So it's interesting. And so if people want to get in contact with you or want to support what you're doing, how can they do that? Well, they just need to go to the website, which is thefreedomhub.org. Okay. .com. Org. O-R-G. Yeah, organisation. And everything's there. I mean, you can see the different areas that we work in there and all the drop-down menus, so they can see that they might want to be more involved in the volunteering or supporting survivors or survivor needs, when they're moving out of house. I learnt long ago not to store things. I'm not a Salvation Army or Vinnies. So we as we need things, we'll put a call out to people. Subscribing to our newsletter means that they would get that call out. Like, we've got a newsletter where we keep people up to date with what's happening in the slavery movement, what's happening with our survivors, what's happening in corporate world, and what's happening with the businesses, as well as survivor needs, that suddenly we need someone with a fridge or a TV because someone's moving out. Have you heard of Ren Fernando? She, I forget the actual business, but what she does is when people get a house, they might have come out of jail, they might be homeless or DV, and then she sets up all the furniture in the house, like $30,000 worth of furniture. Yeah. Wow. Maybe she'd be a good contact for you as well. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
So that would be
all right.
That would be the thing.
Well, look, it's been great chatting to you. It's great to chat to people, doing something really good, that's really needed. And I'm sure a lot of really good, stories that can help startup founders that they're at the beginning of their journey as well. So thanks so much for coming on.
No problem. Thank you. Okay.